Welcome back to Module 15 of Com 3073. In the past few weeks, we talked about various quantitative research methods, including experiments and surveys, but we're going to be talking about the other side of the wheel of science today, qualitative research. Now, I'll say that this course is a little biased insofar as it leans much more toward the quantitative side of research than the qualitative. The reason, of course, being that I'm a quantitative researcher by trade, and I know that side of research much more than the qualitative side. With that said, I have done a couple of studies in the domain of qualitative research. For instance, I did an interview study on hurtful and stressful events that can happen on social networking sites. Likewise, I've been long invested in studying bullying based on intergroup differences in the Pacific Island region using ethnographic methods. The key thing to understand is that despite quantitative research and qualitative research being quite different in their approaches, one family of methods is not more important or better than the other. So let's get into the topic of qualitative research methods. A good starting point for qualitative research methods is, of course, by defining what I mean by it. This is largely review from our module on meta-theoretical perspectives, so if you want to go back and review that material, this might be a good place to pause the video. When I say qualitative research, I'm talking about a family of research methods that produces descriptive or non-numerical data, such as observations of behaviors or personal accounts of experiences. The goal of gathering this qualitative data is to examine how individuals can perceive the world from different vantage points. One major advantage of qualitative data over quantitative data is their depth and richness. With qualitative data, you're able to contextualize the behavior or phenomenon under investigation within different or multiple perspectives and lived experiences, something you can't really do with numbers circled on a questionnaire. This leads us to something called thick descriptions, wherein researchers are able to bridge connections between the behavior in the social cultural context in which they occur. Let's quickly compare quantitative and qualitative research once more for a solid understanding of the terms. As you've come to realize from the last several weeks, quantitative research is considered an objective approach in that researchers only administrate the study. They try to separate themselves from it to the extent possible. Contrast this with qualitative research, which is considered far more subjective. The researcher is expected to play a central role in the research. Quantitative research is interested in patterns or relationships among the numerical data representing attitudes and behaviors. Qualitative data looks beyond simple patterns and tries to understand the complex system in which the phenomenon is taking place. From a meta-theoretical perspective, you might be able to tell that the paradigmatic approach of quantitative research aligns with positivism, whereas qualitative research aligns with interpretivism. Remember, in the world of quantitative research, I kept impressing on you the importance of following the scientific method. This is because the scientific method serves as a set of rules necessary to undertake science in a systematic and objective manner. In essence, the purpose of the scientific method is to eliminate the biases that can be introduced by the researcher. But this is not important in qualitative research. In fact, the researcher is a welcomed part of the research process in qualitative research. Many qualitative researchers refer to this as researcher as instrument, or the idea that everything interpreted by the researcher, including his, her, or their field notes, determination of what is evidence, what specific evidence is sought and deemed relevant, and then piecing the different themes together into a workable narrative, are all filtered through the lens and biases of the researcher. The researcher playing a central role in the research process is a hallmark of qualitative research designs. Now, truthfully, this causes me a little anxiety when performing qualitative research, but this is a bias in me I cannot easily let go. Recall a video early in our discussion about research where I told you that the 4 primary goals of research are description, prediction, understanding, and control. Description refers to the use of research to define, classify, and categorize subjects and their relationships. Descriptions allow us to establish generalizations and universals. Once we're able to describe relationships, researchers make predictions about future events. Predictions are often made in the form of hypotheses, which are tentative, testable predictions concerning the relationship between or among variables. Understanding is achieved when the cause or causes of a phenomenon are identified. This happens when the researcher is able to make links between the phenomenon and the socio-cultural context in which the behavior is taking place. Finally, one of the last goals of research is to control the behavior. This can happen through the use of interventions for behavior that may have a negative influence on people's lives or can help to improve their lives. Considering these goals, then, what do you believe the main objective of qualitative research is most closely aligned to on this list? If you said to gain an understanding of a phenomenon, you'd be absolutely right. The first type of qualitative research method is called interviewing. In interviewing, the researcher invites members of the community of interest to an appointment. During this appointment, which is often recorded, the researcher interviews respondents and asks about their experiences with the behavior or phenomenon under investigation. The researcher often comes to the meeting with a set of interview questions or what's called an interview protocol. The protocol is a list of questions that the interviewer intends to ask the participant. The questions on the protocol are usually aligned to the research questions the researcher wants to pursue as part of his or her research. It's important to make note here that there are different interview techniques in the interviewing method. For instance, in some cases, the researcher's protocol will have all of the questions that he or she wants to ask participants prepared, and all participants get the same exact questions. This is called a structured interview. If the researcher comes in with few prepared questions while intending new questions to be formed by the direction of the conversation, this would be called a semi-structured interview. In very rare cases, the researcher will walk into the interview with nothing and let the questions arise in a free-flowing, impromptu manner. We call this unstructured interviews. Each method has its advantages and disadvantages, but meta-research has shown that some preparedness leads to better experiences for both the participant and the researcher. The second common type of qualitative research method is called focus groups. In focus groups, the researcher invites a few members of the community of interest to a group appointment. During this appointment, again, which is often recorded, the researcher interviews respondents as a group and asks them about their experiences with the behavior or phenomenon under investigation. The group dynamic is an important artifact of focus groups. Members hear the experiences of other members and either validate their experiences with ones of their own or provide discounting information if their experiences do not conform with others. The third type of qualitative research method I want to focus on is called ethnography. In an ethnography, researchers will travel to the environment of the members whom they wish to study and situate themselves in the culture or society. They use field observations to gather information about the research questions they have. For instance, my master's advisor who studied at UT Austin did her dissertation work on an ethnographic study of families in the Oaxaca region. Specifically, she wanted to know how food and the act of eating together promoted close-knit ties among family members. So, she spent an entire semester living with an Oaxacan family, taking field notes daily about what she observed and what she experienced being a family member in the house. You can see how ethnographies are quite different from interviews or focus groups, where you have members come into an unnaturalistic environment of one's office or lab. Case studies are used when the researcher wants to take an inch-wide, mile-deep approach to studying a single individual, a family, an event, a company, or some other unit. The investigation follows this single entity and probes the issue deeply. The unit of analysis in case studies is usually someone or something very unique and often has a perspective no other person has. For instance, I might do an investigation on the communication patterns of members working in the Facebook campus. I may gather multiple types of data to understand the system in which the Facebook campus operates. The only issue of case studies, despite getting very valuable information about the single entity, is that the results are limited in their generalizability to other entities. That's all I have for Module 15, our final module of the semester. Thanks so much for your efforts in our online course. I really enjoyed having you in this class, and I hope we can actually meet in the coming semester for an in-person class. We covered a good amount of information in today's video. Today, I defined qualitative methods and made great efforts to distinguish it from quantitative methods, which we talked about for the greater part of the semester. I then talked about how qualitative methods don't strictly conform to the scientific method because they ignore the idea of maintaining a value-free axiology. Finally, I talked about 4 of the predominantly used methods in qualitative research, although there are many more, such as record keeping and process of observation. As usual, please let me know if you have any questions or if you have feedback about this course which might help to improve it for future semesters. Please take care and please reach out if you have any questions about the final project. Have a great week and end of your semester. Take care.